It's such a pleasure being on this platform and interacting with several of my young friends and others who are distinguished speakers in their respective fields. I'm extremely humbled and delighted to join this wonderful team this evening. But before we start with our discussion, I must get you to the Constitution of India because it is in the Constitution itself, in Part 4A, Article 51A, which is all about the fundamental duties of every citizen. We have subsection F, which says to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture. If we go to the Constitution and we look around ourselves, being as Indians, being as those people who first came up with the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or the world is one family, it is absolutely mind-blogging for all of us to realize that India, being one of those ancient most countries, having their own heritage, resounding its glory and honor all over the world. And it's been since millennia that it's happening. Being someone who works into heritage and archaeology and history, I get to have chances of encountering several other people who work in their own right in various other ways. I also get to have chances of interacting with students. Very recently, after the second wave got over, and I got some chances to visit certain schools and interact with the students, I came to this realization that being interested in history and being interested in culture is very much inherent in every Indian, especially speaking about the Generation Z people. You know that the millennials and the Generation Z, me also being a part of that generation, are very much interested into things that are outside their syllabus rather than what is related to the syllabus. And teachers must be knowing it, they must be noticing it ever since the schools have been back on track. If I speak about some instances, people must have seen that their children got interested into K-pop, K-drama. Many of the millions of Indian students joined BTS armies and Blackpink bands. And it is a testimony to the fact that Indian people are interested in knowing about the cultures of other countries. I got several instances when children were trying even to learn Korean or Japanese languages for themselves. There has always been crazes about foreign cultures, and India has always welcomed new ideas and new ways of thinking. And I think that this wisdom, this knowledge of other cultures is what makes India a compassionate country. Because it is said, Vidya dadati vinayam, knowledge imparts compassion. And India, as a Vishwa Guru in its own right, has always been compassionate about living things, living beings, and fellow human beings, even plants, for example, which led to the idea of ahimsa that was ingrained in the ancient Indian texts and that guided our nationalist movement for independence in the 20th century. The very idea of culture is so much intertwined and ingrained in the ideas and the philosophies and the principles of the very existence of India is actually a testimony to the world that cultural studies go hand in hand with human existence. Human society is absolutely dependent upon how deeply we are aware about our cultures, because it is culture that distinguishes a human from an animal. It is culture that separates mankind from jungle. And therefore, it is important for us to realize that studying culture and understanding culture is a way, a duty for all humans and all Indians especially. I must also share one of my many experiences regarding this thing. When I saw that after the second wave got over and children, when they were going back to the schools, many of the students were traumatized Many of them were suffering from psychological trauma. COVID can be an example. Social isolation because of the lockdowns could be another reason of this trauma that happened to many students. And many of those traumatized students switched to culture and studying books and reading and watching videos on YouTube regarding or related to history and culture as a means of relieving their stress, or doing yoga or exercise or meditation. These were some of the methods the students were using to relieve themselves off from stress and trauma. Again, a testimony to the fact that culture can also heal in some way or the other. Culture can heal individuals, culture can heal nations, and culture can even lead to administrative and policy making issue solutions. We all know that India has always been rich in heritage of ancient texts related to varied fields and disciplines. If I talk about the Arthashastra, which is an ancient Indian manual on state craftsmanship and politics, it is still widely used in the Indian context as it was when it was written for the first time 3000 years ago. When we get instances of certain strategies being applied in case of wars or famines, we see that many of the tenets of the Arthashastra were used or indeed are still being used in the Indian constant and by the Indian states or the central governments. It is a testimony to the fact that the very idea of history is alive and it is before us to realize and also to make the connections between what we were and what we are. Because ultimately, the bridge between the future and the past is the present. So, unless and until we are not on one side of the cliff, we cannot cross the other. So, we need to make ourselves understand the importance of history and the importance of understanding our culture in a very deeply ingrained and enlightened way. When I got certain students who were interested in Korean culture, I was also seeing and observing that the Korean language itself, which was until now considered a language isolate or a language that didn't have any relation with any other language, suddenly found a link with Tamil, which is the ancient Indian language. And it is such an auspicious day today that on the 15th of January every year, we celebrate Thiruvalluvar Day. Thiruvalluvar was an ancient Tamil poet, and his writings are considered to be classical works of Tamil literature. Words like Oma, Appa, Agi, Aki, all these words are common in both Korean and Tamil languages, which was a shocking revelation for linguists and scholars because it revealed that how Korea also has its offshoots from India. As a legend goes, one of the princesses from South India, a Pandyan princess, got married into the royal Korean family about 2000 years ago. And all the people who are descendant from that Indian princess still have the prenomer Kim in front of their names. So all the people in Korea who have their names following a word Kim are actually those who are descending from that Indian princess who got married into that Korean royal family. It is again a testimony that how our country was such a great nation that it brought out its arms and extended it far over to other places in the east as well as in the west. I got an opportunity 3-4 years ago of studying the connections between India and Egypt. And it was on the basis of Ashokan Buddhism or the Buddhist faith. Ashoka, the great Indian emperor, had sent to Egypt, Greece, Syria, Persia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Myanmar. And you must have been observing that even today, countries like Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Myanmar are majority Buddhist. The starting of these countries being a Buddhist country is actually from Ashoka, when he sent Buddhist monks to all these countries to propagate Buddhism. We knew that Ashoka sent monks towards the south and the east of India, but we had no evidence to showcase the same in case of the west, towards the Mediterranean Sea. In 2017, I went to Egypt and did an extensive research on finding evidence, and there we came up with lots and lots of literary and artistic evidence to showcase and prove that India and Egypt were connected since millennia. And these two countries still share a very ancient and cordial relationships between them. The international relation is also in some way or the other related to archaeology, history, and culture. Therefore, we need to see, because as this event itself is avant-garde, or the way of thinking afresh, the way of experimenting with our thoughts and our experiences, we need to see and realize how culture has to go hand in hand with new and varied field of interest. This time is a time of startups and innovation. The 21st century is a century for India. It is a century for Asia to achieve new heights. And instead of using old systems and methods, we need to switch over to innovation. And culture would be the compass for our guidance. I hope that some small notes of wisdom from my side would be able to have some new ways of thinking among the students. It would help the students to think afresh about their surroundings and about themselves, and how to proceed towards the future using innovation based on innovative culture. Thank you so much. Satyamev Jayate. Namaskar.